Hi everybody, welcome to the Prince's Trust Diversity and Inclusion webinar. This is our third live talk in an upcoming series of webinars all around equality, diversity and inclusion. In the next hour, you will learn from our truly amazing panelists on what is intersectionality and why is it important. My name is Dagmar Bennett and I work for the innovation team in the Prince's Trust. Just over a year ago, I wanted to change my career. I started a business in East London and it got turned into flats. So I really wanted to change my career. I started applying for jobs and I really struggled to get into work. Despite having a first-class degree, starting a successful business and having lots of freelance experience, I found myself as a young unemployed person. So I went to the Prince's Trust to go and get help. I did the enterprise course, which is an amazing business course. Where the Prince's Trust supports you on your ideas. And after doing that enterprise course, I still was struggling to get into work. So I went to the Live Camp, which essentially, for those of you that don't know, is a one-day event where young people who are ready for work will meet with employers who have job vacancies. And for me, this was like completely revolutionary at the time because I was applying for jobs and I just wasn't getting interviews despite feeling like I had lots of experience. So I went to that one-day event, I think I had about 3 or 4 interviews and I walked away with 2 job offers. And to this day, my manager, she still hasn't seen my CV. So I think the power of having those face-to-face interviews is really, really important. So I've been successfully employed now for just over a year in my first ever office jobs. And I started these live webinars so that we could talk about equality, diversity and inclusion. So if you're a young person who's out there and you were like me and you were looking for a job and you were struggling, please do reach out to the Prince's Trust. Their team is amazing, they're super supportive and they can help you on anything that you need. Especially with the current landscape, I would advise anybody who's out there just to reach out to us and get as much help as possible. It's all free, just Google the Prince's Trust. So I wanted to start these talks to make a change to young people's lives. I believe that if we create economic justice for the next generation, then we can create a more inclusive and equal workforce. Yes, we need to educate ourselves. Yes, we need to have open conversations. But most of all, we need to take measurable actions within our companies and within our workplace. So I urge the audience today, whether you're a young person, a freelancer, or a business, to take some pen and paper and write down some key nuggets of knowledge that you're going to hear within the next hour. So please support me on my journey for helping the next generation because all of your opportunities really do change young lives. The Prince's Trust is the largest youth charity in the UK. We support thousands of young people aged 11 to 30 to help them into employment. The Prince's Trust vision is that every young person should have the chance to succeed, start something with confidence, courses and career. To celebrate the Manchester Centre reopening for face-to-face delivery, we want to share with you the work that we're doing up north. As well as having an all-northern panel today, we also want to share the work that we're doing with the Future Workforce Fund, which is a groundbreaking 2-year initiative that tests innovative ways of delivering support for young people in Greater Manchester. Future Workforce Fund aims to transform young lives in Greater Manchester. So this morning, with our all-northern panel, we'll be hosting this panel discussion to help businesses understand what intersectionality is and why it's important. I'm super excited to present our panelists. So we're going to have a 45-minute panel discussion. And at the end, we're going to do a 15-minute Q&A. So if you want to write any notes or have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the right-hand corner. So now let's get down to the exciting part, which is introducing our amazing panelists of today. Mo, would you like to go first, please, and introduce yourself?
Thanks, Dagmar. Hi, everyone. I'm Mo Isap. I'm CEO and founder of the IN4.0 Group. We're a technology training and recruitment business headquartered at Media City at the Landing. Over 25 years, I've started and scaled a number of businesses and all across Greater Manchester and nationwide. So spent a lot of time in business in Manchester. presently I'm co-chair of the Greater Manchester Local Enterprise Partnership, which is responsible for essentially the economic prosperity and vision for Greater Manchester. That includes skills and employment, as well as inward investment. I'm also a trustee, vice chair and founding director of Star Academies. We have 30 schools across the UK, 20,000 young people in some of the most disadvantaged communities, and very proud that over the last 3 years we've been voted the best multi-academy trust in the country. Also a board director of the Careers and Enterprise Company and the New Schools Network.
Amazing. Christopher, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Okay, I don't think I've got as many titles as you, buddy, but I'm CEO of Brand Advance, which is a diversity media agency, where I think probably by the end, in the next 2 weeks, we'll probably be around 110 people in my company. We've got offices in New York, small one in Manchester, London, and we're just about to open one in the next month in Berlin. I sit on a few boards as well, so I'm randomly on the board of the Victoria and Albert Museum. I'm on the board of a diversity board at the WFA, which is the World Federation of Advertisers, on the board of the Conscious Advertising Network, and on the board of Advertising. Yeah, I don't think there's much more to add.
Amazing. Thank you, Chris. Aruj?
Hi, I'm Aruj Aftab. I'm a fashion creator, activist, inclusivity consultant, and the founder of #DoneWithDiversity. So I do a lot of fashion content. I speak a lot about the market on my Instagram and kind of educate my followers on that, but I encourage brands to not tokenize diversity and rethink the language they're putting on their billboards, in their workplaces, and how they're representing true diversity.
Amazing. We've got an exciting panel today. Big up the North. So we're going to start going straight into the questions. Chris, you're going to set the scene a little bit for us. So as someone who is the CEO and founder of Brand Advance, an award-winning marketing company which helps brands connect authentically with diverse audiences global, and a mixed-race gay father, can you set the scene for the audience and explain what intersectionality is and why it is important for companies to understand?
Yeah, what's intersectionality? We're all intersectional, you know. It's where what might be deemed one bracket of diversity or crosses over with another. So I am black. That is only one, you know, facet of that makes Chris Chris. I'm gay. That's another one. I'm a father. That's another one. You know, I'm a male. That's another one. It's sort of where two things like being black or being gay or whatever cross over. That's intersectionality. You know, where you don't fully sit in one camp or fully sit in the other. Why is it important to companies? I mean, that's a no-brainer. You know, companies, whatever they are, in whatever industry, need to employ, sell to, work with everybody. You know, and these different facets that make up me, they are me, you know, and I am a human, and companies need to interact with humans. And there are billions of other humans like me, well, there's billions of other humans, but they're not quite like me, and they have their own intersectionality. They have their own facets that make up them. And so, yeah, it's important that companies understand the different parts that make up people and ensure that them and their employees and their output and their marketing and, you know, all is inclusive to every part of what might make up somebody. I don't know if I waffled a little bit or if I actually answered that.
No, that was spot on. I was just going to talk a little bit about Aruj. I don't know if you wanted to add anything on why you think that's important for companies to understand.
Yeah, I think often for me, it's always the difference between intersectionality and diversity inclusion is that intersectionality allows the mic to be passed around more rather than one representation for one community. And I think that I think what needs to be a focus is intersectionality in workplaces, not diversity as such. And I think you just get to hear different voices and amplifying those voices rather than fitting a stereotype, fitting a box, and thinking this is how it should be for each community when each individual in that community is completely different. So yeah, again, what Chris said, I think it's a no-brainer for workplaces, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Rouge, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit, about your story and what your relationship with intersectionality, and how did you become so passionate about breaking down the barriers that you may have faced?
Yeah, so my story is a big chunk of why I'm doing what I'm doing today. So at the age of 2 years old, I was diagnosed with neurofibromatosis, and this is a condition where benign tumours grow on the left side of my body, and it's caused the left side of my body to be disfigured. So I grew up with this condition with like lumps all across my left side, and still, lived a very happy childhood, normal life. I carried on. And I got to my second year of university and a new tumour grew, and it was a large plexiform tumour on my hip, and that's caused a disfigurement. So immediately I was still doing fashion, I was doing a fashion course, I was fashion blogging at the time, and my style switched up really quickly to oversized menswear fits. And I just found so much more comfort in masculine fits for my own confidence. So I did that, eventually shared my story to Instagram, and I did a BBC documentary called My Tumour Made Me Trendy. And in the first day of that documentary, we got 1.5 million hits, and it went viral. It was like my social media just like blew up essentially, so I wasn't prepared for that. So like fast forward, popping off, literally people sliding through DMs and all sorts. So after that, I noticed that I was working on a lot of panels and a lot of brands, but a lot of the word diversity was exposed to me for the first time. And more went on, the less my story got told, and more I was on these diversity campaigns, and I wasn't sure if it was because of my condition, because I'm brown, because I'm a female, because I wear menswear. I wasn't sure why I was in this diversity box when the word diversity signifies difference, and my message was we are equal. So it was really confusing for me, and I just kind of wanted to be seen as not a regular kind of girl who's got this condition, but it's not defining me. I just wanted to simply raise awareness, and that's it. And then I started #DoneWithDiversity, and basically saying to brands that you can't tokenize diversity. Being black and brown isn't diversity. Having a disability isn't diversity. Someone's sexuality isn't diversity. It's all normality. And so this campaign I've been working on since last year, and actually launched it in January this year. And it's going well. I mean, I'm trying to pass the mic to different communities as well, so it's not just me talking as well.
Yeah, amazing. I love that point that you were saying about that we are all equal. Mo, I'd love for you to join in from a business perspective. So as the CEO of One4, an expert in building partnerships to provide technology training and recruiting graduate technology talent into local high-skilled employment, what is the importance of understanding intersectionality and the barriers that young people face after graduation?
Thanks, Dagmar. I think I'll start with saying that my naivety in terms of understanding the theory of intersectionality, and it was only since this particular webinar was announced I sort of did more research about what the theory was actually saying, and really it's sort of lived experience. There's nothing like lived experience, and Rouge and Chris have already touched on that even in my normal life that we take as granted. And I was speaking to my wife and talking about intersectionality, and she without hesitation has said, well, over 25 years I have told you that there is a difference between you and I, that although we are minorities in ourselves, that we come from a BAME community, Yes, she's female, I'm male. And we also articulate our faith in different ways. So she may wear a hijab, and in doing so, she will encounter different experiences than I may do. And that is a reality. And what sort of really struck me was that it's not about the fact that, as Aruja said, that, you may be of 3 or 4 different minority groups that intersect. And that means that you have double the problem or treble the issue. It's not necessarily that, it's actually a new problem. And understanding that in its different context is really important, because what people might say, oh yeah, Aruja's disadvantaged because she's a female and from a Asian heritage background and with a disability, so therefore she's got treble the trouble. It's not treble the trouble, it's a completely different construct, and you've got to understand that in the prism of that individual, and how they encounter the discrimination that they do. And until and unless business doesn't get very single-minded and serious about the problem, because the way business works, and this is the truth of it, business works to a problem. You look at COVID, and we have a problem. We have an economic shock, and we have a problem to solve, and therefore many companies are making redundancies. Many are looking at diversification, and we're all sort of addressing a problem. The problem that we've had, and we still continue, and probably this is the time then we will make a significant change, because COVID has put a light on this, is that we're not facing or working to a problem. Diversity in itself can be addressed through numbers. And as Aruja said, you can tick a box and you are diverse. Inclusivity is different, because inclusivity is about impact and nurturing a culture. And if you nurture a culture, that takes longer, but the numbers are different then, that you need to give a voice to people. You need to be able to understand their lives and their circumstances to be truly appreciative of how to support individuals to make a success in that particular business. So we've got to look at it from a problem point of view first, and actually articulate the problem. We also need to actually put some numbers to it, because again, business doesn't really perform unless there are some significant numbers that they need to actually achieve. So for instance, we know the data says that if a minority is represented up to and beyond 30%, they then have a voice significant enough to make significant change. And one of the things we talk about is senior leadership and board level representation. Well, nothing is going to really change unless those numbers reflect inclusivity and impact. And thirdly, you've got to have consequences. I fundamentally believe, look, in business, we work, Chris has, he's got 100+ people working for him. We all give responsibility and accountability to individuals, whether in sales or marketing or product design or whatever it is. But we also then attach consequence to that. And it's all right saying that we're accountable and we should be all accountable, and leaders have to be accountable, and business owners need to be accountable. But there must be a consequence to that as well, to say, well, if you aren't doing that and if you're not delivering, then what is the consequence of that? And we need to see that from that prism as well. So I think where we are as business is really to get single-minded. I think COVID has exposed the inequalities that we have and the disadvantage that communities face. And I think I was reading some data that it was startling that the economic inequality gap really started to accelerate for the UK in the 80s. But then when you map the actual concern that people had of that inequality, it's been pretty flat. So what that means is that people really weren't concerned about the widening gap and the widening issues of inequality, because they weren't really aware of the extent of it or the scale of it. But now COVID has actually, completely, exposed the level of inequality, the level of discrimination. Obviously, the recent events with regards to Black Lives Matters and the exposure onto that as well. Now people are now seeing, wow, this is a real problem. But what we've got to now convert that to is to say, right, if it's a real problem and we're serious about addressing it, then what is the actual, impact, the actions that we're going to take, and what are the numbers and what are the outcomes that we want to see? And because the other thing I want to just, finish off with is we all live in social borders. One of the things that COVID has also shown us is that we live in a stratified world. So even this sort of virtual working, and everyone says, oh, great, virtual working is superb now. But what it's actually exposing is that there's one area where if you've got a high income and an earning capacity, we all work in a stratified context. So we all actually congregate with people of a similar education or a similar, earning. And then there's another work group that's on the other side that we very rarely interface with. Now, all of a sudden, our workplaces are homes. Well, it's all right if you're, earning good money and you've got a nice house and you've got a room and you've got a technology and you've got all of that. But the people who are working on the other side of that social border do not have that privilege or that luxury. And again, the gap is now widening because then again, they cannot access the opportunities that are there. So working in a stratified context with social borders, we've got to break those borders and we've got to start to understand, as Aruj just said, that you've got to live that person or you've got to have an appreciation of their existence. Because if you're making policy on the basis of numbers, like diversity policy, and you aren't breaking the social border to go and understand that person's reality, you can never make the difference. Look at the health issues that we're seeing with lockdown. Which are the communities that are suffering the most? They're the most disadvantaged communities that are exposed the most because they don't have the luxury to sit in their nice houses, in their nice gardens, to actually earn the money from home on Zoom. They have to be on the taxis and in the takeaways and in the front line of the NHS, but you can't appreciate that reality unless you actually put yourself into that and then understand how you can support that individual. We've got 35 STEM graduates, 50 of whom are female, 65 are from BAME communities, 75 are first generation. And I speak to all of them and I see that clearly, that they are the anxiety of having to assimilate and not be authentic. One of the things, Aruj, so brilliant, that you have to be authentic. And if you have to assimilate your identity because the intersectionality is not appreciated and therefore you will have to assimilate to what the environment is, you've lost your authenticity. And as Chris has said, the power and the dynamic that you could bring to that organization is lost. So we've got to create an environment where people feel confident to be themselves. Actually, you want to recruit them for what they are, not what you see them having to be. And the anxiety for a young woman who's Black and has a hijab, having to actually assimilate herself to have to conform because her voice is then drowned because she's not willing to be courageous because she feels that will be seen in a derogatory or a negative context. So I see a world that we have to live in where everybody's climbing that ladder equally. But we're actually actively recruiting because that authenticity is what we desire, not what we need to appease a number.
Yeah, I don't know, Rouge, were you going to say something to add on to that?
Chop on what Mo said. I think the problem is that people get confused between diversity, inclusion and intersectionality. They think it is a box essentially for brands, for companies. And I think, but what it is that people can do that, but they're not actually tackling the real problem. What they're doing is creating more of a problem, because you can't fully be diverse if you're not inclusive, and you can't be fully intersectional if you're not diverse. So it's kind of like, it's not a matter of hiring people from different communities. It's a matter of understanding those communities before you actually hire them. Because it's kind of like, I've been in places where I've been the only woman of color, and it's difficult being that person. So it's really, and there's so many factors to my story, and so many I've always been the only one representation of my kind in a workplace, whereas my white counterpart might have many similar people she can relate to in that workplace and have conversations, whereas don't fit into those conversations because I can't relate to their social habits, or I can't relate to what they do. And I think that the problem with hiring businesses is that, you know, you either hire graduates, especially I came out of uni and I jumped straight into a job, which was amazing, but I think you essentially need to hire the person for them, and you need to hire the person for what they can bring to your company. I've seen, like, so I got made redundant during COVID, and I've seen many kind of applications, 10 plus years experience, 20 plus years experience, 6+ years experience, and there's no room for young people. And it's kind of like, but young voices are needed now more than ever. So why are you following 10-year-old marketing habits when somebody new can bring something new to your company? And it's really understanding that intersectionality. It's really, I don't really believe in experience as much. I get you need it, but I think if someone's got the drive and ambition to move the company forward, I think they can learn within the business as well. So there's many different, it's not even like, I don't think even with what I do done with diversity, it's not just about race, it's not just about gender, it's not just about what the generic norms of diversity and intersectionality is. There's just a lot more to a person that defines that intersectionality and what they can bring to a company.
Can I add on that?
Go for it.
Yeah, I'm not as well spoken as them, but I think for me, I mean, we've been having like diversity, inclusion. It should be ground zero. We shouldn't be on this panel talking about it. We shouldn't have people with jobs that that is to go into a company and to make sure that it is implementing diversity, it's implementing inclusion. Like it should just be ground zero, should be the start, and then we should just be talking about businesses and stuff. But that's not life. I think recently, and why it's a thing now, I mean, one is a little bit of what Mo was saying, you know, like 3 months ago, the black guy that drove the bus was called a low-skilled worker, and the Indian lady in Tesco's was called a low-paid worker. And then all of a sudden, now they're called key workers. We clap on a Thursday. We say, thank you for your service, just like an American service person. Do you know what I mean? Like this new the whole mentality of governments and society as consumers, society as citizens, looking at people now that we didn't, or that were not noticed before, you know, not noticed, whether because it was deemed a menial job, not noticed because you're one of them people that stupidly says, I don't see color. Well, you know, I'm black, so if you don't see color, you pretty much can't see me then. You know, I think now society has, we see, you know, Black Lives Matter happened 4 years ago. It happened 4 years ago, exactly the same, you know, policemen in America were killing black people. There was marches on the streets and no one really gave a damn because the only people that were bothered were black people that said, I matter. Skip forward 4 years, we've realized that, you know, overnight we can take our liberties away. We all thought we couldn't run our companies from home. 24 hours, we're running our companies from home. We all thought that, you know, a flu disease going around and stopping the world from spinning was just a movie called Contagion on Netflix. Then literally it happened. Like the whole world stopped overnight, just gone. Everything, you know, it didn't matter if you know, were a billionaire, it didn't matter if you were jobless, it didn't matter if you lived on the street, we were all in exactly the same position. It was all taken away and the world just stopped spinning. I think where we are now is us as human beings and us as consumers, we demand more now. I've got a voice now, you know, I'm fortunate, I'm privileged enough that I get asked to speak a lot or get interviewed on TV and radio and stuff like that, you know, bit of smoke blowing up my backside every so often, which is nice, you know, you work hard for it. But I think really we're all empowered to speak up now for things, you know, whether it's in advertising, a term that's used all the time in advertising and outside advertising, blacklists and whitelists. The blacklist is bad, the whitelist is good. Are you blacklisted in your house? That means you can't get any credit. You know, like, why are you associating my, you know, what's also associated to the color of my skin? It's also associated to the demographic I live with bad. And then saying, you know, these little things in society where now before you would have went, oh, it's just the way that it's always been. You know, it's only a word. No, it's not only a word, because I've got a 15-year-old son who I wanted to come and do work experience here. And he literally WhatsApped me from Germany. They live in Germany, well, half in Germany, half here, but they're stuck there now at the moment. He WhatsApped me and said, I don't want to come into advertising. Black is bad and white is good. He's right. Look at everything that we've got, you know, like it literally is written. Black is bad, white is good. So I think society's changing now, you know, Mo touched on it. And another thing for COVID, and I know this is, you know, it comes across a little bit arrogant. It's the only way I can get the point across. My company didn't suffer during COVID. Our revenue went up by over 400%. I had 50 odd staff before COVID lockdown. I've come out of COVID lockdown with 107 or something. And do you know why? Just because, you know, just like Ruth said, young people doing things different, number one. Number two, all brands, all consumers now want to see their friends, their family represented in advertising. They want to see companies and only want to spend their money on companies that mean something, you know, whether it's sustainability, whether it's standing shoulder to shoulder. You know, a little black box on your social media does not mean you stand shoulder to shoulder. It's what are you doing? Where are you? What are you funding? Are you funding Facebook right next to, you know, I haven't been called a nigger since I was 12, yet somebody wrote it on my Facebook when I live streamed at the Black Lives Matter march. You know, I'm 37 now. In all that time, nobody's ever said that. Who even uses that word anymore? Right up until a 37-year-old guy that's, you know, in the top 100 UK multi-ethnic execs. You know, my company's been in the top 100 fastest growing for 2 years, and now someone wants to stick that on my Facebook. You know, so who's funding next to that? You know, because I'll never, if I see a brand right next to that statement, I ain't going to spend with them again. You know, so yeah, I don't want to, you know, waffle on and go off down a rabbit hole, but literally, I think now companies could have fared better during COVID, but when we had a real choice of who to go to and what to spend our money on, we chose the better companies, the companies that represented us. And old school is getting left behind. It really is. Old school, you know, look, just because that's the way it was. And that doesn't mean only a certain age can do well and anybody over that age isn't going to do well. It's just changing with the times. You know, Generation Z they don't even look at the world. I listen to my kids. I've got a 19-year-old and a 15-year-old, and the stuff they come out with, it wasn't like that when I was young. But I need to remember now that they're the consumer, you know, 60% of all consumer spend is coming from them now. So, yeah, I hope that made sense.
Dagmar, can I just come in? Chris has made some really pertinent points. And probably if I speak on behalf of the Greater Manchester vision, and, you know, one of the things you mentioned, Dagmar, at the start, that, you know, you're working with the Greater Manchester Combined Authority and the Future Workforce Fund, and it's great to have you guys. I mean, you guys have worked with one of my organizations on the DEVA hack, start with content creation, which has been phenomenal. So it's great to have partners like yourselves in Greater Manchester. But what I would say is that, you know, as Greater Manchester, that's our vision as to what Chris has articulated, that there is a generation and future generations that are going to come. They're the ones who are going to actually build our economic prosperity. And one of the things that, you know, we see on the ground at the moment is, you know, we hear about, you know, digital transformation, a green transformation. We talk about health innovation and transformation in the health agenda. Simultaneously, if we're really going to build back better, which is one of the things that we as Greater Manchester, the LEP and the Mayor and the Greater Manchester Combined Authority have come together on, is that there must be social transformation. And social transformation has to be embedded within all of our economic activities, because unless we do that properly, we're not going to see the difference in the landscape that we need to see. It's the reality on the landscape that, you know, somebody says to you, well, you know, Chris is an exception to the rule at this moment in time. There's more Chris's out there who are struggling, but they're not working any less harder. And what people will say is that, you know, well, I worked hard, I got through, these guys just don't want to work hard enough. But that's wrong. You know, people need to understand the social, economic constraint that you live with, you were born into, that actually governs. No matter how hard you work, there are still barriers that you will not be able to you know, break, and it is a reality. But unless you understand that, and the data actually shows that, you know, as inequality rises, people believe more in meritocracy, because what they see is, well, I made it because I worked hard. And everybody says that. And even in the boards, what you subliminally will find is boards will say, well, these people just don't want to work hard enough, do they? Really, they just want to get on and march for the rest of their lives and campaign. And, you know, these are the students who really don't want to get out of bed. That's not the reality. The reality is I've seen more hardworking young graduates that work into my organization than I've seen, you know, middle-aged people who are professional on, you know, 60, 80 grand salaries. So there's no lack of work ethic or motivation. And Chris is absolutely bang on. The talent we have, the world has changed, and big businesses, small businesses need that voice, need the ideas, need that creativity, need that spark, need that energy more so than ever before. And business, you know, the data does not lie. Those companies that employ that type of individual do succeed and will succeed going forward. We deploy that. All of our marketing is done by, you know, people like Chris, and we reach different communities because of that reason. So from a board point of view, what I will say, that there is a anxiety. See, if you don't understand the problem, you always are going to be nervous of it. You don't you're not going to disagree that there is a problem. All boards, corporate, non-executive board members, charities, organizations will all agree to the problem we're discussing today. But because you don't understand it well enough, you will have an anxiety across it. So what we need to work on is to actually build the confidence in the leaders, whether you're white, male, female, whoever you are, that you feel confident to be able to address the problem and actually make it, you know, develop a solution to that problem. Otherwise, people will go back to what Aruja said. I've done the numbers. I've ticked the box. That's fine.
Can I jump in, Mo? Because I think it's really important. I'm getting out. But whose job is it to teach? So you're saying middle-aged white guys that don't understand it, so that's the slow. It ain't my job to teach a middle-aged white guy what diversity and inclusion is. Like, Google can do that. Type it in Google, it will give you 1,000 pages of links to read up on it. I'm living it, you know, and until they, you know, the boards, like, why have a lot of companies not done so well during COVID? You know, because obviously there was a big pandemic, but a lot of companies arrogantly said, oh, we don't need to go digital. You know, I've always had stores. My stores, well, actually, when the government says you can't go out, then your stores are pretty useless. Doesn't matter if you've got 100 or 1, you know, things like that. It's and companies that did well were ones that were digital savvy, etc., etc. I think the excuse of let's keep waiting so that they can catch up and get you used to, you know, the change in society, and it's hard to get used to. And it wasn't like this in my day, so you know, I need time. Like, I haven't got time. I've got a 15-year-old in 2 years that's going to be 18, and he needs to come into an industry where he is not hindered by his colour, does not walk into an office and see 2 people in an office of 1,000 that look like him, with a CEO that's patting himself on the back saying, I've got 4% BAME in my office. Yeah. 50% of London is BAME. Like, Well, I think.
Yeah, and
sorry,
the answer to your question is exactly what I started off with in the beginning when I said that leaders, it has to go beyond accountability. There has to be consequences to, if you're a leader and you're not delivering, there has to be, we employ salespeople. We say, right, this is your target. If they don't hit it for the first quarter, you say, right, what's happening, guys? Is there a problem? Do we need to support you? Do we need to do some more activity with you, training, whatever? If there's a second quarter of a lack of target, Chris, you're a businessman. What are we going to then have a conversation around? Sorry, pal, you took the accountability to that target, to that outcome, you did not deliver. We as leaders, all of us, have to sign up to that accountability. If we're not doing it, step aside and let somebody else in who will do it. When you talk about digital transformation, you're absolutely right. There were people who are apathetic about it. Now they've seen the consequences of not doing it.
Yeah.
If business leaders are going to truly lead an organization to success, they need to understand there are consequences of you not doing this because it will hurt you on the bottom line. That's the problem we need to define, and the consequence to the accountability. Everybody says, yes, I'm accountable. A politician will stand up. The politician is accountable to their voters, and you have to have a mechanism of voting them out. And if you're not doing it,
so like you were saying, I think the problem here is, which I've said already with my Done With Diversity campaign, is that there's culturally inexperienced people behind the scenes. And that's because there's not enough people like myself, people like Christopher, people like Mo in maybe bigger HR roles and kind of leaders. I mean, the majority of leaders that I've seen that are diversity and inclusion consultants are white leaders. And there's a lack of understanding of the tick box again. They think this is right, but they're failing to actually communicate with actually what it is that you want. And I think that the problem here is, with the Black Lives, when that was really amplified, we saw so many brands get it wrong on their social media, and that then they admitted that they have very lack of representation. Then the word BAME was thrown around, then diversity was thrown around, and I really don't like the word BAME, don't like the word POC, do not like the word minority, and I feel like diversity is now another word to define race. And it's kind of like we were promised to be more diverse, but what do you mean by diverse? Because it's really confusing.
Yeah.
So, do you know what I mean? So I think the problem with what you guys were saying is that it impacts a society as well as a digital sphere, and then I think it dominates it nationally, really, because if we're not progressing in the employment industry, if we're not progressing on what we see on our social media feeds, if we're not progressing on what we see on our billboards, magazines, how do you expect people to actually learn in the first place?
Yeah.
And I can say, if you're privileged and you have a seat at the table, just make it your duty to build a bigger table. Like, I look at workplaces now. I used to go in as a normal brown Pakistani girl, like just go in and apply for a job. I will not apply for a job at a place that has a very lack of representation now, unless they're actively doing something about it. And that's just my personal thing now. Something that I've learned in the past few months is value. And if a company can't value representation anyway, why am I going to go into that workplace to expect and be expected to be valued? So it's really understanding that as well.
And Ruth, just to find, and I touched on it, and I can't, because I've seen it over a 25-year career. When there's one thing about, making sure that we've got the right people there, but then those people are authentic.
Yeah.
You've got to be authentic to who you are. If you start to assimilate, we've seen too many people who will be fronted by policymakers. Oh, look at that person. We've got such and such in the cabinet, and we've got such and such people. We're not. We're doing the bit. We're not. You can't label this at us.
Yeah, literally. No,
I mean, and this is the challenge with the young people, and people will not appreciate unless they walk in their shoes.
Yeah,
that how they have to tend to assimilate. And if you have to assimilate, you're not authentic. And if you're not authentic, your voice will not carry.
Yeah, but I think it's hard as well. I've been in workplaces where I'm only 24. I graduated in 2018, and it's been difficult. And I think being in workplaces is like they see you as an employee, and you're young, you're inexperienced. I've had if I had a pound for every time someone said this to me, we do things this way in our company, we've been doing it for the past 10 years and it's been working this way. And I was like, but what about digital? What about hearing more representation voices? And they're like, we don't need it. And they're like, you feel like we need it, but we think we're doing fine. And it's kind of like when you're an employee in a workplace, I feel like it's harder to be heard. And since I've been out of a job and I've been working on done with diversity, I've had more attention than not being an employee. And I think I've been taken more seriously being an outsider rather than being an insider. And I don't understand why there's that disconnect of I should be treated just, if I was giving you this information on representation, on intersectionality as an employee, companies should be taking that and not looking at me like, oh, she's a millennial, she's an activist, she's marching on the streets, this snowflake generation or whatever it is. And I'm just like, it's very frustrating. But I've noticed ever since I've been out of work, I've been taken more seriously than I've ever been in my years since 2018 to now, since working. And it's really confusing.
What do you think? Because I definitely agree, we need to uplift young voices, we need to give them more power within the workplace, because unless you listen to young voices, you're not going to change, you're not going to adapt, and you're not going to be successful as a business, because young people are the future. So we need to listen to them as much as possible. Rouge, what do you think the solutions are for how can companies address that within their HR or within their work culture? What do you think companies can do to change that?
I think there's a lot of things, first one starts with education. Like, what are your training resources? Who are you hiring? What is your hiring process? I read a study where I think Oxford University said that people from, again, using the word BAME because it was studying that thing, but people from BAME backgrounds had to apply 80% more when they had ethnic names rather than white counterparts. So I think the thing with companies need to do is not base it fully on the name, not base it fully on the gender, look at the experience, but don't define somebody by that. I feel like a piece of paper is so outdated. I would rather someone be like, hi Rich, are you free for a Zoom call on next week? We'll chat then. I do not want to send my CV. I feel like it's just outdated. My CV can be sent to them on the day of a day before my call. But I just think, the process of applying for a job, then waiting, then being judged by a piece of paper, by your name, your experience, your age, your university, your location, where you brought up, that is quite narcissistic, and I think it's quite superficial to be judged on that. So I think companies can do better by making the hiring process a bit more 2020. Do you know what I mean? Not 1980. So it's really moving forward. Another thing is call people into your workplace. If you see people online, there's so many speakers from Black, Brown, and Asian backgrounds, from LGBTQIA plus backgrounds. If you're not sure about something, there is so many public speakers online that you can literally be like, pay them for their time, come and give a workshop. A lot of businesses do things internally, but I think they're failing to acknowledge they've already got culturally experienced people in their business. So why are they going to get somebody to study something, then give off what they think that is right, then educate the company in something that's not to its full advantage? So it's really kind of pushing for more of a bigger table and understanding, look at your work company, look at the stats, as Mo said, look at how many BAME representation you have, how many Black representation you have, Brown representation, South Asian representation in comparison to your white counterparts, and really understanding what it is that you need to be able to push your company forward. I think for me, the process is so simple, but I don't know, it's been complicated by a lot of companies because I think it comes down to pride, and we don't need this because we know what we're doing. And a lot of the time people don't like to admit they're wrong. And companies don't like to admit that they have very lack of representation in their workplace because they don't want to be seen as racist. But I think it's not racist if you don't have lack of representation. All you need is just to do better. And I think that's the important thing, again, authenticity and honesty.
I think young people nowadays with social media have more respect if you're just honest about it and you address the problem. And then make a change.
Stuff, like, I'm just like proper on it. I'm just like, With my work, it's all Instagram based. So it's all social media based, and I'm very much heavy focused on, as of recently, in LinkedIn, but very much Instagram is my go-to place, because I feel like the audience on there is the audience of the future, is the audience that are in workplaces, is the audience that are in marketing roles, or is the audience of activism. And I think without activism, there's no moving forward. So either companies become social media savvy and get with the times and use digital media. Don't just go off what you read in the newspaper, actually see all sides of a story if you were to publish something. Like the Black Lives thing is a great example of what happened recently, where brands put out content and it was just, they've never worked with a Black creator before, but you see a black box, you see Black Lives Matter, then you see a bunch of black creators, then it goes back to the normal feed, and it's kind of like it's not authentic. So it's really not making something a trend and doing something for as well.
I think there's one point I'd say, and I don't know if you touched on it, but I think for me it's the most important point. It starts with the CEO and no one else, and all the accountability. I know Mo said that, but all the accountability is with the CEO. It's there, they're accountable to their shareholders. I'm accountable to my shareholders. Like, all the accountability of pushing through change, of ensuring inclusion and therefore diversity. It needs. Nobody actually has accountability. We employ a person and call them a D&I person, but are they accountable? Do they lose their job if it's not sorted? And they shouldn't, because theirs is a job. They should be there to affect the change. But the CEOs, even the boards, like, it is now accountability. We are privileged people that get paid a ton load of cash for, within that privilege to run companies. So that has to come with accountability, and that accountability needs to include, what does the company stand for? What is the ethos and the culture within that company? What is the external ethos of said company? That's all on us as leaders. If we're going to, enjoy our lovely apartments in London and swan around, then for that privilege is to take that accountability and not to shirk it to someone else, or to spread it out so no one's truly accountable. Everyone's accountable, or to wrap it in woolly little words. I am accountable. Everybody, if there is somebody in Brandon Vance that does not feel that this is not an inclusive place, that feels that the culture does not allow them to be their true authentic self every day, then I am doing my job wrong and I need to get it sorted. And I should be it's my job to bring in the people to ensure the processes that can in turn ensure that my company is always an inclusive place, is always culturally relevant, let's say, is always a place where people want to be, and is always putting out content and working on behalf of our clients to ensure that, the standards that we say we stand by, whether it's a black square in our social, etc., we truly stand by. If we're going to say shoulder to shoulder, then stand shoulder to shoulder.
Amazing. Authenticity is key. Mo, I just got a question here. Just got around 6 minutes left to do a few questions from the audience. So Mo, I wanted to ask you, how do you gather data on intersectionality or analyze intersectionality within the workplace?
Well, I think gathering data and intelligence is not a hard job to do if you want to do it. And as Chris said, if you've got motivation and if you are actually really committed to making it happen, you will understand the dynamics at play in your workplace, and you will also understand the gaps, and you will also understand your employees better. One of that, again, going back to that point that we live in a stratified environment. How often do we interface with those employees? And the income scale actually determines how much of that interaction you do. So, you know, employees and employers, how much interaction? I mean, one of the stats I saw was that even people don't appreciate the inequality income gap that exists within the world today. You know, when there was a survey saying what ratio of income a CEO earns higher than their entry-level staff member, a lot of people said 15-1. The reality is 90-1. In America, it's 350-1. So even your employees don't appreciate the inequality that exists within your own employment environment. So when are you going to actually properly understand the reality for your employees? When do you actually understand the challenges that Aruj or Chris or, you know, Aisha or, you know, whoever it is, and how can you empower them to be color brave rather than us saying you've got to be color blind? You know, it's the other way around. You know, you've got to be actively saying that this gives me power in my organization, and I want to understand the data behind it. The data is quite clear. 33% companies perform better if they're inclusive and diverse. Female-led businesses perform better on that basis as well. There is no questioning of the data. And if you wish to, you as a culture in your organization will actively want to understand the data. We understand the data about our customers all the time. We understand the, you know, data around our profit and loss all the time. We go anal about that. So when are we going to actually have the same metrics and the same measures in terms of HR? One of the things I have to testify, you know, within our education environment, you know, we've got 20+ schools. We're actively surveying our staff members, actively saying, you know, do you feel this is a safe place for you? Do you feel empowered in this organization? Do you feel you have a voice? And there's something to be learned from some of those organizations. So sometimes we have to learn from other sectors and other institutions to say, how do you do that? And how can we as businesses, you know, incorporate that within our culture? Because unless the culture changes and people feel confident to express their views, you're not authentic and the data will be wrong.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. I would like if we could finish off and we could tell the audience, I know my sort of takeaways from it from Chris is that the CEO inevitably is responsible. Aruj, it's about authenticity, and from Mo, it's about accountability. I was wondering if each of you could give the audience and all of the companies that are listening one action that they need to go away and do after this talk that they can to create a change. What's the actions? Mo, do you want to go first?
Yeah, mine is easy because I've got something brewing that, you know, want to promote to all businesses. We've got the Young Person's Guarantee that we're going to be bringing forward in September. That's working with Andy Burnham, Diane Modal and myself and the LEP and the CA and the Mayor's Office, which means that we want to assure every single young person in Greater Manchester a minimum of a training opportunity as well as a job opportunity. That's a huge ambition, and that's sort of cross community to all of our, you know, disadvantaged and advantaged communities, all sectors, all diversity, all inclusivity. So we want to pull that together. We need businesses to support us in that endeavor. And as you've heard, if you're a business on this call today, the compelling fact of why you would want young people in your business, especially now, has been made. I think the evidence is clear. So I think what we want to do is to engage all of our businesses in this endeavor, give them the support to be able to recruit or provide training to our young people. We've seen already massive spike in universal credit claims between the 18 and 24-year-olds, 120% increase. By October, there's going to be more redundancies because of the furlough scheme ending. So we have a big vision in Greater Manchester. Obviously, Prince's Trust is part of that vision, and you're working hard for us to achieve that. But like all businesses, so if you go on to Bridge GM, which is our sort of dedicated employer platform, you know, commit whatever you can to support our young people, because one thing's for sure, we in GM will not be able to build back better, will not be able to be the leaders in our economy, in inclusivity, in terms of opportunity for all, if we don't protect our young you know, generation at this moment in time when we've got such a big challenge.
Amazing, thank you. That's a good action for those companies to take away. Aruj, what's your action for companies to do after this talk?
Action goes back to my campaign that I started, Done with Diversity. You guys can check it out on Instagram. There's a page called at Done with Diversity, and there's also my personal page, which is at it's.aruj. So on my page, I educate a lot anyway. I post a lot of things about inclusivity. But the action that I would give is really rethink your language. Stop tokenizing diversity, because diversity isn't black and brown. Diversity isn't disability. Diversity isn't a gender or sexuality. It's normality. So it's really kind of, for me, let diversity tell a story, base it on experience, base it on skill set, base it on culture. Just don't base it on the way someone looks and identifies. So that's my first takeaway, is just don't tokenize diversity. Another one would be please listen to young voices. Like, I'm so over this 10+ years experience stuff, and I just think that we're in a generation where we've grown up on social media, that we honestly know what people are thinking. We know what your consumers thinking, like we're your consumers. So just please listen to our voices as well, and do a better job to build a bigger table. That's 3 takeaways, but you've got it all in one. So.
Thanks. No, that's brilliant. Thank you, Aruj. Chris, what you may have to unmute yourself, but what's your takeaways for companies to key actions?
It's one really, and I keep it short and sweet. Just do better. Even if you think, that I am the most inclusive CEO, I'm running the most inclusive company, or I work with it, we can all do better. I can do better. I look for ways to do better every day, every week, looking for something else. Is it bringing someone in? Is it just double checking a policy? Is it, speaking to people to see how they truly feel? Whatever it might be, do better. Because if we all keep trying to do better, then in the end, ground zero will be inclusion. We won't need things like pride marches, because it's a march, not a parade, because there's not true equality. You won't need Black Lives Matter. You won't need any of that. If we all just every day say, I can do better. Don't get complicit. Don't think you're already there. Don't think your company is the most inclusive place. We haven't got all the answers, and there isn't a single company on earth that has got it. We all sat there last night and watched the 5 biggest social media platforms get destroyed. Not one of them had a good answer to some of the questions they were getting asked last night. Zuckerberg and Tim Cook and everybody was on, live getting, and these are running platforms that, yes, they do loads of social good, but they also, they fund hate, they fund far right, they allow a platform for racism and anti-Semitism and homophobia, and so we can all of us do better. So that's my takeaway, is just do better.
Thank you everybody, our amazing panelists. Truly insightful conversation. Thank you so much again on all Northern panels, so thank you everybody for that. I just wanted to finish off just saying, if you're a young person, please reach out to us, and if you're a business and you're looking for solutions to help companies, or if you do want to reach young people, then reach out to the Prince's Trust, and we can help you get access to the young people that we work with. We've got another webinar coming up in a couple of weeks, which is a special edition around International Youth Day, so look out for that. That's all going to be around youth unemployment and how we can help young people get into the workplace faster. So thank you everybody, and enjoy the sunshine. Thank you.